Hello all and welcome to my page. I'm Marcus Cash. Down below you will see my media handles for basically everything. YouTube, Instagram, you name it. I appreciate you stopping by the channel. Before I get into my rant of this episode, be sure to click the bell, like, share, subscribe, comment away, and share with any and all. I do appreciate your time and thank you in advance. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Marcus Cash. This is the 10th edition of Bruce Prichard's Monday Night Raw. Now the show starts off kind of hectic from the opening credits, let's call them. Apparently Retribution, this Antifa-like group that they've started with no real actual wrestling personnel attributed to the group yet. Just kind of a bunch of recruits still filling those roles, but
no one cares.
They took over the production truck, started affecting the show. They didn't really make too much of an impact the rest of the night.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So thankfully, hopefully, someone in some position of power realizes that this is kind of stunk so far, and they didn't drag it throughout the show. They kind of made them be a menace and a nuisance at the beginning, and they weren't really all that heard from the rest of the way. So that's a win for me. Now, for the next up here, we have the Hurt Business, and we have Apollo Crews defeating Shelton Benjamin. This will ban the Hurt Business from ringside during the match at SummerSlam. MVP versus Apollo Crews for the US title. A bit of a throwaway match. Essentially, it was a jackknife cover to get the win so they can have that stipulation and have a rationale for it. Now, right after the match though, R-Truth makes a random appearance, but he gets kicked in the face by Shelton Benjamin. Shelton Benjamin is the gold standard once again because he's now a two-time 24/7 champion. However, later on, just to get it all out the way, he's going to lose that title to Cedric Alexander, who's going to successfully defend the title against Akira Tozawa, and then lose that title back to Shelton Benjamin toward the end of the evening almost. So, Shelton Benjamin, gold standard for a little while, but gold standard again, three-time 24/7 champion. After the match between Apollo and Shelton, MVP challenges Apollo Crews to a six-man tag later on in the night. The math being here that there's MVP, Lashley, and Shelton Benjamin for the Hurt Business, but on the other side you have Apollo Crews, and then his friends are Ricochet, Cedric Alexander, and Mustafa Ali. So there's four of them and three of the Hurt Business. So basically Apollo has to pick two out of the three and leave somebody out.
Love that!
Apollo Crews ends up picking Ricochet and Mustafa Ali, which is kind of weird to me considering Mustafa Ali was just absent from Raw last week because they've had seemingly already demoted him. Also, Ricochet and Cedric had been a tag team for a while, so the thought was that it would be a pretty easy decision. Didn't really expect Ali to get the nod over Cedric. I find that to be quite interesting because MVP did try to recruit Cedric away from Ricochet a couple of weeks ago, and after Cedric got snubbed by Apollo Crews, MVP let Cedric know that his offer still stands and that there was still a position for him within the Hurt Business.
If you don't have any friends.
Obviously, it didn't play out tonight, but I wouldn't be all that surprised if this led to something at SummerSlam and a potential title change, or maybe the Monday night after SummerSlam. However, I've already been let down and proven quite wrong with the whole Apollo Crews joining the Hurt Business thing in the first place. So maybe I'm getting my hopes up, maybe I'm not reading between the lines as well, but interesting nonetheless. Now, in terms of that six-man tag, pretty one-sided. They take out Mustafa Ali and Ricochet fairly quickly and fairly easily. Apollo Crews battles back though. He eliminates Shelton Benjamin and he eliminates MVP. But then he eats a spear from Lashley and that's the win. Obviously the right decision. Lashley is the biggest literally the biggest star within the ring. So he should be getting the win, but it did make Apollo Crews look like a serious and competent contender, not just in defending his own division, but any future plans to move up the ladder for him by holding his own 3-on-1 and getting those odds at least even.
I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
Speaking of things being even, the Viking Raiders, particularly Ivar, seems to have this even back and forth seesaw gimmick persona, whatever you want to call it, between being absolutely goofy and silly and stupid.
Stupid.
A stupid idea from bad creative.
Summoning turkey legs like it's Thor's hammer.
The hell was that?
And being a serious fighting badass in the underground. They can't pick a thing, so they're gonna run with both of them. There's that girl, really don't know where she's from. Her name's Erin or something.
Excuse me.
But she's the guest backstage, and Ivar's still putting the moves on her. So is Angel Garza, so is Angelo Dawkins. It seems like Garza won her affections at first, but we're gonna get a match which Garza's gonna win with a dropkick to the head on Ivar. I don't love it as a finish, but obviously he can't do the wing clipper to someone so large, so decent enough rationale for a secondary finisher, I guess we'll call it. But after the match, Angelo Dawkins has a video on his cell phone that apparently Samoa Joe has seen for some reason. It shows that Zelina Vega did indeed poison Montez Ford.
I meant to do that.
So while those denials from Zelina Vega were pretty insistent, turned out to be a complete lie. I think that whole storyline is pretty dumb, but if someone did poison Montez Ford, I would have liked for it to be someone in Retribution, but at least it's not Andrade or Angel Garza, so it doesn't make them specifically look any weaker. I don't like that it would set up a potential rift between Zelina Vega and the Vega Boys, maybe because they feel like that she doesn't have any confidence in them, or maybe it would have cost them the title opportunity. Whatever the case may be, I'm not really here for any of it, and I'm less here for the fact that we have this weird three-way tag team feud going on. I don't like any of it. I love the players in the feud. I love all 6 guys in this storyline, and the 2 ladies actually. So I'm a fan all around, but just the sum of all the parts just doesn't add up. The storyline for all 8 people involved, I can do with not this. Actually, I think I'd prefer no storyline at all and just random matches between them. Now, cutting through some of the throwaway stuff on the episode, they had the Mickie James match that they referred to last week with Natalya and Lana being in her corner. If you recall, last week Mickie James had a major announcement that she never made. She didn't make it this week either.
No one cares.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I'm assuming that the announcement was that she was gonna compete again and be on Raw this week. They didn't really make that so black and white, but I'm making assumptions here. Now, for a match, it was a bit odd considering Mickie James and Natalya have both combined to wrestle there for about 37 years. I'm embellishing, but I think slightly.
Excuse me.
I'm embellishing, but probably only slightly. 2 of the most veteran women on the roster, and they treated them like it was an Attitude Era Divas match. The bell rang, the match started, and it proceeded to literally only be background noise for Seth Rollins to come out and question Samoa Joe on his sources on who told Samoa Joe that Rey and Dominic Mysterio were gonna be in the arena tonight.
Make it make sense.
Seth Rollins and Samoa Joe just bickered at the announce table, kind of yelling but lower toned. And then the match between Mickie James and Natalya saw a finish. Could barely even tell you how it finished, and I was watching the thing intently, just because I was rather surprised Mickie James was still as capable in the ring as she had pretty much ever been. Looked like she didn't really lose a step. I don't know. Throwaway match. I assume it's going to be a throwaway feud that never was between the two ladies. As soon as that match ended, though, Rollins and Samoa Joe's intensity definitely picked up. Clearly, whenever Samoa Joe is cleared to return, he's jumping right back into a program with Seth Rollins, which I like, but I also fear that they have too intense of a style against one another that's going to lead to Samoa Joe just getting injured again, so I actually think I'd prefer not to see it whatsoever. Speaking of Seth Rollins, though, and his disciple Buddy Murphy, they were in the backstage area when Dominic and Rey Mysterio came out, pretty much promoting the SummerSlam match and the fact that Rey Mysterio is going to be there in Dominic's corner during a street fight between Dominic and Seth Rollins. So Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy come out to the ring. They plan to lay out Dominic and Rey Mysterio, but the Mysterios had planted a couple of kendo sticks around ringside, and they had their way with Buddy Murphy and Seth Rollins. Nice little spot. If I could tolerate the Mysterios whatsoever, I probably would have even enjoyed it. But I have a rather large disdain for them both, so let's just call it decent enough. Now, the next thing here on my throwaway list is the Iconics. I know, I'm shocked as well that even I have to put an iconic segment in the throwaway list here. I absolutely love the Iconics, but they didn't really do them any favors this week. They had, originally, I imagined Billie Kay against Ruby Riott for tonight, because last week they had Peyton Royce versus Liv Morgan, but Billie Kay stated that because her shoulder just wasn't feeling right, Peyton Royce was going to take her place and take on Ruby Riott. It seemed like they were trying to hint at Liv Morgan should replace Ruby Riott, considering they were talking about being a really good friend and taking each other's spot. But that wouldn't have made sense because that was a match last week. Didn't really make too much sense other than the fact that they're specifically trying to push Peyton Royce as a single star. And why I love that for her, I hate that for Billie Kay, and I hate that for the Iconics. I'm growing increasingly worried about what seems more like an inevitable split between my favorite women's tag team ever.
It's so sad. It's very sad.
The match itself, though, kind of garbage, honestly. Peyton Royce hit her little knee to the face thing that used to be her finisher for a while, but she hit her Goldust-esque spin-out suplex that she calls Deja Vu. She gets the win. That was pretty much it. Decisive win. I guess Ruby Riott's never going to figure out the name Peyton Royce. I don't know. Decent enough segment in the back that led to this match, but the match was just all kind of trash. Kind of a loss there. Now on to a couple of women who are just winning at everything nowadays.
Wow, winning. Just winning. I'm going to win. You make a choice to win, and you win. Winning.
The golden role models. We have Bayley, 2 belts, and Sasha, 2 belts, Banks. And they start off in the ring cutting a promo. Essentially, Asuka's gonna fight Bayley for the SmackDown Women's title first on SummerSlam, and then Asuka's gonna face Sasha Banks for the Raw Women's title second.
Nobody is ready for Asuka!
Now, they didn't establish that this match would be back-to-back. I'd imagine that it's not. Probably within the first hour of SummerSlam, and then during the last hour of SummerSlam for the second match. They did establish Bayley's going to go first, Sasha Banks will go second. The Golden Role Models versus Asuka and Shayna Baszler are in a tag team match for tonight, but rather quickly into the start of the match, Nia Jax shows up. She gets into a brawl with Shayna Baszler, and Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax basically fight their way into a complete disappearance from ringside. And the match doesn't end in a disqualification, which is baffling to me because wasn't it just last week where they had Asuka and Bayley get into a fight outside the ring and neither one of them touched the actual competitors inside of the ring and thus never interfered with the match, but that match was thrown out by disqualification. But yet this match has a participant in the match get into a fight with someone not in the match and leave the entire arena, and they don't call for a disqualification and they let the thing continue as a handicap match. There's just no consistency. Like, it just happened on your own show. It's not even from Raw and then on SmackDown, and there's no sync there. You can argue it's different brands and maybe they're a little more lax about the rules on one show than the other, or whatever excuse you want to give. You had a horse crap finish just a show ago, and then the same thing doesn't apply here on the same show with the same participants in the storyline. It's not even different people in this moment that you're like, oh well, you know, regarding other people, X, Y, and Z versus A, B, and C, different rules for different people. No, it's the same people. You should have called disqualification because that's what you just did. Nonetheless, didn't all the way hate it. Shayna does end up getting back to the ring after a while, and she factored into the decision of the match. She ends up tapping out Bayley with her Kirifuda clutch. First off, super shocked and surprised that Shayna Baszler got the win. I love the fact at how much sense that it made for Shayna Baszler and Bayley to factor into that decision specifically. Shayna Baszler being exclusively on Raw, Bayley theoretically being tied to SmackDown if/when she loses her SmackDown title. They wouldn't really cross paths too many times aside from Bayley's appearances on Raw as a member of the Women's Tag Team Champions, which doesn't really seem like a belt Shayna Baszler will ever even look at. Decent enough. It protects Asuka from losing to either Bayley or Sasha Banks before SummerSlam, and vice versa. Prevents Asuka appearing to beat Bayley or Sasha Banks, so Shayna definitely had a factor in. I would have imagined Bayley beating Shayna Baszler just because of how protected Bayley has been, but considering they've, I want to say, established Shayna Baszler as the next contender for the Raw Women's title after SummerSlam, giving her the win seemed pretty smart. That whole segment was a win and had me pretty excited for the two matches on SummerSlam, but also the Monday night after. Now, aside from the win and her claiming she had next for the Raw Women's Championship, just to further make you feel like the Shayna Baszler push might be back on and to get your hopes as far up as they were a few months back, like around February, hopefully not to be dashed again this time though, they had Shayna Baszler's friends backstage on Raw, Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke, the other two members of the MMA Four Horsewomen, besides Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey, who's doing Ronda Rousey things. So it appears that Duke and Shafir are called up from NXT to Raw, and Marina Shafir is going to debut on Raw during the Raw Underground. Getting the Raw Underground stuff out the way, we'll touch on Marina in a second. They had Eric from the Viking Raiders back, so his second appearance he wins a squash, but then he gets called out by Dolph Ziggler, who's there. So we're gonna have Dolph Ziggler versus Eric Viking, I guess. I feel like they need last names. Eric Viking versus Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler gets the win with his sleeper, or I guess we'll call it a win because every match ends when Shane McMahon feels like it. But I thought that was pretty cool to see that we finally had a Raw Underground match between two people we actually recognize instead of two enhancement talents or instead of jobbers or anything like that. So this was fun to see. I guess I'm not surprised that Dolph Ziggler would beat Eric, but I think Eric should have beaten Dolph Ziggler. I don't think Dolph Ziggler ever loses anything from losing. I know he's an eternal loser. I know he never wins the big match, but he's just kind of established as like always being a threat whenever he wants to be. So I think he's safe. I think you can do a lot more good in building up Eric and Ivar with these, tough man matches that they have in the underground versus having either one of them get choked out to Dolph Ziggler. But Eric loses to Dolph Ziggler. Next week, by the way, we're going to have Ivar versus Dolph Ziggler. I'm sure Ivar is going to do something silly and stupid and dumb and time wasting and just a total waste. Besides that, probably before and or after his Raw Underground segment with Dolph, but whatever. That's just Ivar doing Ivar things. We do get another match with people we should be familiar with. Most casual Raw fans probably not, but NXT fans for sure. Even gradual Raw fans should be. We had Arturo Ruas making his second appearance in the Underground versus Riddick Moss, who's making his second appearance in the Underground. And I know they're not going to officially label it as such, but it seems like this was the first no contest in Raw Underground's already short history. They started off pretty much trying to grapple and get the upper hand, but they rolled out of the ring, and then instead of just continuing to fight each other, they fought people that were too close to them outside the ring. Shane McMahon called it a match, stood between them, and never really led to any resolution. Seemed like a waste. Shane McMahon would say later on in the Underground that the only rule in the Underground is that you have to fight, which is also counter to when he said that there were no rules in the Underground whatsoever. But then later on he'll say that there's only one rule where you have to fight. But here, granted, before he makes that one rule announcement, he doesn't let the two people fight just because they rolled outside the ring and hit a couple of people that were outside the ring. Doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense with itself. None of this is following the same thought process. It's literally a segment in a moment, and then the same theme. We have another segment in another moment, but it's all totally different. I enjoy Shane McMahon on my television, and I appreciate any excuse to put him on my television, but this is mind-numbing almost. I'm sure it'll come to something decent. It looks like it's at least building to that. I don't think it's going to be anything great, but it's hurting my brain and it's insulting my intelligence before it even gets to anything decent, and that is a horrible way to start anything. Now, we mentioned Marina Shafir debuted on the Underground. She was facing Enhancement Talent also. Pretty quick-ish kind of match. Kind of a triangle hold, but not really. Got her the win. But the key note here is Nia Jax showed up and she laid out Marina Shafir and then she kicked Jessamine Duke in the chest. And Shayna Baszler popped up on the mat to challenge Nia Jax to a match, but Nia Jax ran off scared. Obviously, we're going back to the Nia Jax Shayna Baszler feud that they had awkwardly dropped for a little bit. Maybe with Nia being suspended from in-ring competition, she'll only be allowed to fight in the Underground, and maybe that's even a SummerSlam match we'll get with Shayna Baszler versus Nia Jax in the Underground. Not really sure, but a lot more promise to that than trying to put them in the ring. Maybe without any turnbuckles or ropes, Nia Jax will have less ability to recklessly hurt Shayna Baszler. I can only hope. Now, main event segment, we had Shawn Michaels come out to the ring. Essentially, he threatens Randy Orton, saying that at SummerSlam, might be a Sweet Chin music, might be a Claymore kick, but Randy Orton's going to get what he has coming to him for being the legend killer again and kicking all these people in the head. Naturally, though, you can sense how predictable this is going to be.
So predictable.
So predictable.
Shawn Michaels gets an RKO, and Shawn Michaels gets a punt kick to the head. And at least Shawn Michaels was a lot more lucid than anyone else who gets kicked in the head. Most people that get punt kicked kind of just lay there as if they were dead. Shawn Michaels was just kind of stirring. Drew McIntyre runs to the ring though, try to make the save for Shawn Michaels, who doesn't need saving anymore because he's already been kicked. He'll catch Randy Orton, give him a few punches, and toss him off of a ring post and off the plexiglass a couple times. But right when Drew McIntyre lays his guard down, He'll eat an RKO as well.
You will see it coming.
And Randy Orton, the hottest going heel in professional wrestling at the moment, is the one left standing and grinning at his really promising prospects of becoming 14-time world champion at SummerSlam. Not a show I loved overall, but not necessarily a show I hated either. The Retribution thing always stinks so far, but at least they kept it compacted to the very beginning to show their face under a mask, show their mask, I guess. Get the name Retribution onto the show, let you know that they're a menace to society, and then they were kind of done with that for the rest of the episode. The Raw Underground stuff is typically dumb, but they kept that pretty compacted. They had their segments pretty much back to back instead of having one thing and cutting away for a while and having another thing and cutting away for a while. They were putting them more closer knit, which is appreciated. Randy Orton being a legend killer, you had to come up with another legend for him to kick in the head. Shawn Michaels just being around there for NXT tapings anyway, and his connection to Ric Flair makes perfect sense. I didn't expect it before they announced it, so you know, shame on me, but it was a nice plug-in to get us to SummerSlam, and it served its purpose. Very surprised by the total volume of throwaway things. Natty, Lana, Mickie James, the Iconics, Ruby Riott, Liv Morgan. I'm gonna throw Rey Mysterio, Dominic, Seth Rollins, and Buddy Murphy in there just for how quick all of that was, considering what should be Seth Rollins' status on the show, and for whatever reason, Rey Mysterio's status in the company. All of it just felt very quick and afterthought like. Highlights though, co-MVPs, co-gold medals, co-gold stars, whatever you want to call it. Definitely the Hurt Business and Apollo Crews, but also Sasha Banks, Bayley, and Asuka. They were by far and large the highlights of the show. Like I said, Apollo Crews looked like $1 million. Hurt Business still came out ahead. There's more seed planting of friction by MVP to Cedric. The golden role models are the best heels on television, not named Randy Orton right now for the WWE. Asuka picks up a win, which is always appreciated, even though she didn't get the win herself. So those parts were really good, and hopefully they translate into good things for SummerSlam. I don't usually look forward to SummerSlams in general. I think they're a wee bit overrated. They're fun to attend, but in terms of watching, they've never been biggest must-see of the summer. I don't know. I'm intrigued by it, and we'll see what they'll do to make us regret that excitement. But I'd love to hear what you guys think of it. Leave a comment down below. You don't have to message me privately. There's a comment section. I'm pretty sure it's open. Let me know what you thought of this show, what you would tweak in terms of storylines or decisions that were made on this episode, where you'd like to see things go or where you think things are going. Nothing that's been reported. Just let me know what your actual thoughts are. And almost as importantly, feel free to drop a like on the video so YouTube can share it. Feel free to subscribe to the page so you can get notifications on when these episodes drop and anything else that I'm putting on the channel. Share it on your social medias so any family and friends that are a fan of these topics can enjoy these videos as well. Always take care of yourselves, and until next time, I'm Marcus Cash, and my battery is dying.